My name is Eleanor Fleming, and I am course leader and lecturer for construction and also for civil engineering. I am from a small town in the middle of Hampshire. My first kind of use of technology was quite late on when we first got our first colour telly, and we discovered that my parents couldn't work it very well. Therefore, I had to kind of take the kind of lead and use and sort out the telly and then the VCR. Currently, in terms of my lecturing role, it's been a rather long path. Initially, when I first went to university, I went to university and studied archaeology. This has been my passion for most of my existence. I did want to be Indiana Jones when I was much younger. My Barbie dolls were dressed as female Indiana Jones and they rescued Ken a lot. So it's always been a background in history and archaeology. While I was studying, I also worked part-time on an archaeological site in Winchester in Hampshire, where they were looking for the graves of King Alfred and his family. They didn't discover them, but I did get to start using total stations and surveying equipment there. That's when I first discovered surveying. And from there, when I finished my degree, I worked as what's known as a chain person, which is basically the general person that carries all the equipment. And I happened to be standing on the side of a Kentish road holding a GPS kit when somebody from Skanska drove past, stopped, reversed, and said, "Are you aware they're looking for surveyors in the Channel Tunnel in London? Here's my email, send me your CV." And a couple of weeks later, I was doing part of the Channel Tunnel rail link and building a large station in Stratford, which was then used for the Olympics. And Skanska trained me. They put me through my surveying qualifications. They retrained me as a civil engineer. When I met my husband while on a building site, we decided that as lovely as it was living in the southeast, it was time to move back to his home in Cumbria. And while I was in Cumbria, I've had 2 children. And I freelanced land surveying and civil engineering and became a lecturer at Lakes College. Technology is completely integral to the lecturing role, especially with the civil engineering and the surveying. In terms of just general teaching, without the online tools that we've had during lockdown, it would have been catastrophic. It's so wonderful that we kind of have it together. I think when it comes about learning new technology, it's all about the mindset. If you go into it thinking, I'm not sure, then you're immediately kind of on the back foot. I'll explore, I'll experiment, I'll see what happens and what it can and can't do in, say, comparison to something else. With full in the knowledge, it's very difficult to actually break things. I always approach new technology from a kind of like, I want to learn what it does. In my role with the students, we use lots of different applications that they can use through their phones. The students like things that like apps, they're used to them. They're used to kind of Instagram and Facebook and all the other social media. So by kind of making the interface work for the student, it's more of an uptake. All the different things that I'm introduced through the digital department, I experiment and I learn. You've got to have a kind of no fear approach. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong, and you can redo it. I think sometimes the greatest barrier is time. Sometimes you don't have time to investigate things enough as much as you want to. So it's time for me. That's the only thing that kind of stops me using it more. I've had a few disasters when I first started lecturing at college and during online, but I don't panic. So when something goes wrong, the first thing I do with my students is don't panic. I tend to have a backup plan. If when something in the workshop doesn't work or something online doesn't work, to be honest, the first thing I do is laugh and say, we had a problem or I'm having a challenge, please bear with me. I think the worst thing you can do is panic and fluster or tell an untruth. So I'm always honest. I always say, this hasn't worked. So the main thing in terms of when it goes wrong, I don't panic, I laugh it off and I carry on. In terms of future intentions, it's to continue to upskill myself and my department. It's to make sure that we don't go off the boil, but also looking into apps that we could use, and also looking in about how we can integrate technology into kind of the skills, knowledges, and behaviours with the T levels and with the apprenticeship standards.